Hello and welcome to Friday Night Fratricide. It's us, your best friends, your pals, your spooky acquaintances, the Happy Brothers.
We're here with a new podcast.
We are here with a new podcast. How exciting. We've gone from rewatching Frasier, the happy, fun-loving sitcom, family-friendly sitcom, to the deepest, darkest depths of the most horrific horror films we can find.
Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be spooky.
It is going to be spooky. It's not going to be that horrific, though, I don't think.
Nah.
I mean, it might be. I might throw in some curveballs and make some like really proper horrific choices. Just to force you to watch them.
I'm looking forward to that. I don't really have the stomach for like really intense horror movies.
Yeah, this is going to be fun of it.
Okay.
So yeah, this is going to be our. Well, first of all, this first opening episode is just sort of, you know, our history with horror films, what we're going to be doing with the podcast, and you know what we're expecting to get out of it, I guess, other than, you know, ad placements, money, revenue, popularity,
power, fame, wealth,
all the big ones, all the 7 deadly sins. So yeah, you and I have both kind of started watching horror films at different points in our lives. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You far more recently than me.
Yeah. Because you've always been more of a fan of horror movies.
I've always loved horror films. It took you a while to get into them.
It did.
But then you've kind of raced ahead of me a bit. You've gone back and explored lots of films that I've never touched.
Yeah, the past few years I've kind of made it my mission to watch like all of the classics at least. Yeah. Like all the kind of top 100 that is on everyone's lists, you know, so. But I think you've definitely got the time advantage.
Possibly, yeah. There's I mean, yeah. There's probably a few that I can throw to you that you've probably not even heard of.
Oh yeah.
Which is maybe sounds very pretentious of me, but
it's exciting.
I like to explore different films and whatnot, and sort of find ones that people aren't so, you know, that aren't so familiar with people. And that's the purpose of this podcast, I think, is going to be to find these new films and explore them and see what we think of them. The basic format that we're going for is that we will have a theme each week, and the two of us, either at the end of the previous episode or during the week, I don't know how we're going to do it.
We'll probably let you know at the end of each episode what next week's theme is going to be.
The theme,
probably.
And then
give you a chance to watch the films before we talk about them, I suppose.
And then we will bring the two films to the table. We'll both watch them during the week before recording, and we'll just have a chat about them, I think, and compare them, see how they stack up against each other. If they're both based within the same theme, roughly, we should have some things to compare.
Yeah.
We might find some are completely out of left field, like
maybe
totally ridiculous. But I think it's less a competition, I think, and more just a chance for the two of us to explore new films and different films and revisit old ones. And you know, as we did with the Frasier podcast, you know, it's kind of looking at things with a bit more of a critical lens rather than just sitting back and watching them.
Yeah, certainly.
Which is it. I personally have learned a lot. You know, Frasier's one of our favorite shows, and I've watched it countless times before we did the podcast, and yet I'm still finding new things, and learning new things about it, and I hope to do the same with this podcast.
And I'm really excited to do that with, and you know, like you mentioned, with us getting into horror movies at different periods, I think we also have very different tastes.
I'd say so.
Like, I'm a lot more interested in the kind of older ones. I definitely have more of a taste for like some slightly sort of schlockier, sillier sort of B movies, which I'm excited to get you to watch. Whereas you definitely prefer stuff that's a lot scarier.
I like things that get the heart pumping, you know. I like to be scared. I hate being scared, but I love to be scared.
Usually I shy away from the really scary stuff, so there'll be a lot for us to inflict on each other.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. So yeah, while we're chatting about horror films and introducing the podcast and whatnot, tell me about your history with horror films, because you're not a person who was always into them.
No, definitely not. Like, I think kind of as a, like most guys, I mean, the stereotype of like the horror movie audience, it's like they say like men aged like 15 to 25 is like the target demographic of horror movies. But I, like, as a teenager or as a child, I hated horror movies. I didn't get it. I remember even like, 18, 19, just thinking, like, why would you watch a movie with the intention of being scared? I just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in my early 20s. I was living by myself, and it was when the new Halloween came out. It was 2018, the new David Gordon Green requel of Halloween. For some reason, I was getting all these targeted ads for it on the internet, on social media and everything, and I don't know what it was about it. I just became obsessed with this. Like, I kept watching the trailer over and over again, even though I previously had basically no interest in horror movies. And I sat and watched, and because I saw, like, it's a a requel. You don't need to have seen any of the rest of the franchise. You just need to watch the first one. And I thought, well, that's fine. I'll watch the first Halloween, and then I'll go and see this new one and see what it's all about. And that was it. That was it for me.
Yeah.
It was Halloween, and then the new Halloween. For like the next week after that, it was like every night I was just going on like John Carpenter's IMDb page and just like picking one. I watched, and that was like the same that we went to see The Fog.
I remember we went. There's a little indie cinema near us, and they often play sort of older movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It must have been around
October,
around Halloween,
kind of like early October.
And they put on a showing of The Fog.
Yeah.
And me and my dad, our dad, we love The Fog. Both of us have watched it countless times before this, and it was your first time seeing it. And we convinced you to come along and watch it with us on the big screen. And
it's a fantastic film.
You were ever so slightly unsure, I remember, but then we watched it and you were like, that was amazing.
It's such a fantastic film. It really is.
Yeah.
And and then I watched Prince of Darkness as well, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Maybe not his best known or most beloved, but that was the first movie, at least it kind of after that point of getting into horror movies, that I remember finding like genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
And like looking back, okay, maybe it's not that bad, but it was something about like the special effects and the way it ended, and like it really freaked me out when I watched it like by myself in the dark. And I just kind of at that point I was like, right, that's it. I've got it.
You got it. The bug has bitten you.
Yeah, I started putting together lists of like all the franchises. I'd never seen any of the like, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, the Evil Dead, Hellraiser, all these like big, well-known, super like famous and pop culture franchises I'd never seen, and just going through and watching them all one by one, and just that's it.
That's it. That's it.
That's it for
and
me
that
now.
led to
a
horror
this.
podcast.
Now we've got a horror movie podcast.
Yeah. No, I think it's so cool that there was just like a light bulb, not even a light bulb, just a light switch that just like clicked on at one point. And you were like, nah,
I get
these
it.
are good. So I'm so glad that you kind of realized the value that horror
have.
films have.
Absolutely.
But beyond just being like just scary, the point to scare you. But yeah, I still remember like watching, because our dad loved horror films, still does, just doesn't really watch them as often these days, I don't think, or focuses on the older,
definitely
less scary
focuses on
these
the older
days
ones,
standards. And I still remember he put on Dead of Night, the 1945 anthology, and to this day I still have a crippling phobia of ventriloquist dummies. And I didn't even watch the whole thing. It was just like on in the background while I was like a kid. I must have been like 3 or 4, like young, and it wrecked me. It ruined me. But from then I don't know, I remember watching Alien as well, and finding Alien really creepy. And I think there was this idea of like when I was a younger kid, I was like, oh, I'm getting to watch these 15, 18 films, and like I'm getting scared by them, and I can go into school and tell other kids that I'm watching these scary films. But then it kind of snowballed into like actually really enjoying them and loving them and just going on. But I think you've definitely got a more of a taste for the older films, the classics, and I think I'm hoping to introduce you to some more modern films that have like over the last like decade or so have been just top notch, proper skin crawling, blood pumping. There's definitely a few that I'm gonna try and get you to have nightmares. That's my goal.
You will achieve that probably without too much difficulty. Yeah, the past 5 years or so, there have been some really good ones. Like now that I'm into it, actually going to the cinema and watching some new ones. Like I mentioned, the new 2018's Halloween, David Gordon Green one. The new Invisible Man.
New Invisible
was
Man
fantastic.
Was really good. Yeah.
The Nia DaCosta Candyman as well. I really loved. I know that you weren't as fond of it.
I was less keen on it, but yeah.
I loved it. Just some Nope. Jordan
Which
Peele's
I've still
and
not
like
seen.
Jordan Peele generally.
Yeah. But
it's
yeah,
just
Jordan
fantastic.
Peele films, yeah.
Yeah. So as much as I have a taste for the older ones, there are more modern ones that I have loved as well.
Yeah.
So
I think there's enough of a disparity between our tastes.
Oh, definitely.
That we'll have stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
I think there's probably quite a few that we'll agree on, and I think we'll both agree that are sort of outstanding in their field. But I think there's others that we'll maybe have to convince the other to actually watch and make it through the whole way. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, exploring. Just such a huge part of my life is like horror films, horror games as well. Like I love being scared and getting immersed in these creepy worlds. So I'm excited to talk about it and learn some new things about old films and explore some new films as well.
So if you had to pick, as difficult as it's going to be, and like I know that like I'm always terrible at picking favorites, but like if you had to pick, what would you say is your number one favorite horror movie of all time?
The first one that jumps to my head is The Fog. Immediately jumps to my head. When someone asks me that, that's probably the answer I have to go with. Whether it actually is like my number one stacked up against other things, I don't know. But it's the one that I always revisit every year.
Yeah.
It just has the most killer soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Just flawless soundtrack. It's properly scary. It still holds up today. It's got some really creepy moments. Adrian Barbeau, you know,
Jamie Lee Curtis. Got a great cast of that actually. As well as Tom Atkins. It's really good.
It's stacked cast. It's just such a phenomenal film that it's got infinite rewatch potential. So, yeah, if you're asking me, just coming and asking it without having to think about it, I immediately jump to The Fog.
Yeah.
If I had to think about it, I could probably come up with some other ones that have, you know, the scariest film I've ever seen or the most like not challenging, but you know, the one that gives you the most to think about afterwards. There's probably other ones that I could fit in there, but immediately, if you're asking me, probably The Fog. The Fog. What about you?
See, it's one that I have gone back and forth on a lot, and I think I probably, like, you know, saying that Halloween was kind of the one that made me kind of fall in love with horror movies. I have a real fondness for that. Again, I mean, you know, John Carpenter, again, fantastic soundtrack. Just properly smashes it every time.
Yeah.
And the direction's great, and it was so influential. Like, it's really...
Oh, it redefined an entire genre. Like,
really fantastic film. Another one that I don't know if I would necessarily call it my favorite. I think it's more just that it, like, because I have a fondness for it because it kind of kickstarted that in me. Alien is another one that kind of had the same...
Alien's one that's really overlooked as a horror film.
Yeah.
I find. I think a lot of people look at it as more of a sci-fi thriller.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a horror film.
It's basically a slasher. Like, it has a lot of the same, you know, the same tropes, the same plot beats as something like... maybe not quite something like Friday the 13th, but like you've got a small number of characters in an enclosed space and you've got a killer going around picking them off one by one.
Yeah.
That's classic slasher stuff, and it's probably not done in any other film nearly as well as it is done in Alien.
No.
I don't think. Like, that's the best that I think that kind of story has ever been done in a horror film.
I wouldn't strictly disagree with you, to be honest. Yeah. That's quite a bold statement to make.
It is definitely a bold statement to make.
I don't know that I necessarily disagree with you.
You know, I just think it's fantastic. And as like I've, you know, maybe I'm newer to horror movies, but I've always been a fan of sci-fi. So like, you know, Alien is another one that like
crossover. It's
immediately appealed to me because I'm like, okay, this is sort of familiar territory. It's a sci-fi film, you know. even if it did remind me a little bit of Event Horizon, which I remember seeing a little bit of when I was far too young.
Yeah.
That might have been one of the things that turned me off horror movies as a kid, was seeing a little bit of Event Horizon when you and our dad were watching it.
Event Horizon is one that it's it's hard to put into words just how kind of upsetting that film is at points. Yeah. It's really pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to something like Alien, that's very you don't see a lot in Alien. Like, if you take away the chestburster scene, it's not particularly gory.
No, there's not much at all.
There's folk getting killed and stuff, and there's blood here and there, but it's not over the top. Event Horizon's quite
so
gory. Over the top.
I think it was specifically, I mean, it has that one infamous scene where they watch the kind of security footage of what happened to the crew. You don't need eyes
to see where we're going.
And I think it was that specifically, that little bit that I saw completely out of context, that scared me so much. That and Poltergeist. I remember watching Poltergeist, and it scared me so much that it made me sick.
Really?
Yeah. Like, that was not a pleasant thing. Like, that really, really upset me. And like, looking back, I mean, I watched Poltergeist not long ago, and I was like, it's a great film, but it's not super scary. But I think it's just like when you watch it as a kid and you don't know what you're expecting, and it's all the horror stuff's totally new to you.
Yeah.
It's really,
that clown,
upsetting.
That stuffed clown man. He's no fun.
Yeah.
Don't like him.
But like, even the one film that's going to stand out as like my favorite, that I probably have to put up of everything else. Like you say, I watch it every year, but not around Halloween. I watch it around Christmas every year. Is Gremlins.
Gremlins, really?
That's possibly my favorite horror movie ever. And I suppose maybe that's, being a horror comedy, it's maybe not strictly just a horror film.
It's still within the genre. It's allowed.
It's just it just puts a smile on my face every time I watch it. I just really think it's so fantastic. The acting, the soundtrack. I love Joe Dante. I think he's such a fantastic director. Films like The Howling and Small Soldiers.
The Hole.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Hole?
No, I don't think I have.
The Hole's pretty good.
Mm.
It's got some creepy moments in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he just nails it. He has that sort of, I think it's maybe like that kind of B-movie inspiration that he started his career working with Roger Corman. So like, he has a lot of that, B-movie influence in his films, even when he's doing bigger budget, big studio pieces, like Gremlins. And it's just, it's great.
It is great.
I agree with
you. That's a fair choice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we'll call it there for this introductory episode.
Yeah.
We've been rambling a wee bit. I hope this gives you a little bit of a taste of what will be, the back and forth we'll have with the podcast. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And definitely, I don't know if we should set ourselves a challenge. I don't know if we should see if there's, a forfeit or something if we can't finish a movie.
Oh, maybe.
For whatever reason. Yeah. Too bad, too scary.
Yeah.
Too... I don't know. To something.
Well, you know what? We've got our listeners now. Why don't you put something forward for us if we're too scared to finish a film?
Yeah.
Send us in some suggestions. What do you want to see as a forfeit? Maybe we'll put together a list. We can do like a wheel. We can spin a wheel and see what we have to do if we're unable to finish a film. Oh God,
yeah. I like it. It's I think we'll definitely stick with a sort of open format, at least to begin with. We'll just bring some movies to the table, have a chat about them, not worry too much about, we'll give, rankings and whatever and see how we feel about them, but we'll not worry too much about keeping it strict.
Yeah.
And then as the podcast goes on, we'll see what works, what doesn't, what we enjoy. If we have a, spin the wheel of forfeits, then that, we could do that. That would be...
Could be unpleasant.
Yeah. But we're very much looking forward to doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Having you guys along for the ride. And we'll hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
With the first episode.
Should we set up what the first episode's going to be?
Should we tease?
Give you a chance to watch the films if you want to join us.
Well, do we want to tease the episodes or just the theme?
I think we'll tease the episodes at the kind of at the end of each week. We'll say these are the two films we're going to be talking about, and then that way people can watch and they can join us.
That sounds good.
Give them fair warning.
Okay. So the theme for our introductory episode, well, this is the intro for
our first proper episode.
Yes, first proper episode, is going to be asylums. And do you want to tell us what you're bringing to the table?
So I'm bringing to the table one of my favorite of the Amicus anthology films from the early 70s, Asylum, which is just fantastic. I really love it, and I know that you've not seen it before.
I have not seen it,
but I know that you're a fan of another film, The House That Dripped Blood.
House That Dripped Blood,
which was
Vault of Terror,
same
all those era, anthology films.
So it's also based on Robert Bloch's short stories, much like House That Dripped Blood, and the same director and some of the same actors and everything. Okay. So
looking forward.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. And I am kind of going a bit extreme.
Yeah.
The found footage Korean horror. I was going to say horror drama. It's not really horror drama. It's just a horror.
Just a straight up horror. Straightforward horror.
Straight up horror.
Yeah.
Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum, which is sort of the sort of closest comparison would be Grave Encounters. Remember Grave Encounters from sort of, I don't know, what was that, 2010, 2011 or so?
Yeah, around then.
Around the Paranormal Activity era, found footage, that kind of came out. And this takes a lot of inspiration from that, but does it so much better.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so much better.
It is.
It's
a good film.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot to talk about for us.
Oh, a lot to talk about.
Very exciting. So that'll be next week.
Next week. First episode. Look forward to seeing you all there. Yes. I need. With Frasier, we had the easy, like, sort of good afternoon Seattle, and we had the, thanks for listening. I don't know if we should come up with something more exciting for this one.
We'll get something.
Just see you later.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.